So welcome everybody. I'm Will Meurer, and this is an introductory webinar on the Clinical Trials Methodology course. I will be quickly going through some information and then opening things up to questions from the audience. The chat box that you see below is where you can type questions, and we will post this online for people to review later. So one of the things we're going to do first is it seems like you figured out the functions of Adobe Connect. There is, in some sessions, we would have people raise their hands. Here, if you are, thank you for introducing yourself. If you are in the chat window, you can introduce yourself as Dr. Puwanant has. I probably said that wrong, I apologize. And also if you have questions, you can type them there. Feel free to put questions in as we go along. Overall, what we're going to review is the people who are involved with the course, or some of the people, the general aims of the course, timelines, expectations, questions, and then we will have an adjournment. One of the things that we do is we have some interactive elements where we show you a poll. So I think I have a practice question up first. So if you see that down there on the right, there is a poll. And the question is, my most preferred college football team is Ohio State, is A. Michigan is B. C is Iowa. D is Maryland. E is UCLA. And you may not like American football or American college football, but for the purposes of this, since I only have 5 choices, you have to pick what you most agree with. It is possible also to click the no vote choice there. So we've got about 16 people, and we have about 8 responses. So well, we'll show you what is doing the best. So now you can see that amongst these options, Michigan is the preferred college football team. Even though I work at the University of Michigan, I am an Ohio State fan. But I think that was, so now everybody knows how to use the multiple choice thing, so we'll sort of move on from that. Oh yeah, and then we have a new question, so we'll clear the poll and put it back up there. This is basically just to see where people are calling in from. So if you could just put your current time zone. This ends up being a little bit of something when we do scheduling of small groups, because certainly 8 in the morning Eastern time is ridiculously early on the West Coast. And you see that we do have a preponderance of Eastern time zone folks on the call right now, although we've tried to hold this late enough in the day that it is not ridiculously early for our West Coast participants. So one key problem with this slide is it lacks pictures of Sam Awocha, who is our project manager, and Jenna Russell, who is our administrative lead here at Michigan. And it does have the course directors. So Roger Lewis from Harbor UCLA Medical Center is pictured up there, as is Robin Conwit from NINDS, and Lori Gutman from the University of Iowa, myself, and Chris Coffey, who is from the University of Iowa. So the aims of our course are to identify promising investigators in the clinical neurosciences and provide them with a rigorous foundation in the design, funding, conduct, monitoring, and oversight, ethical performance, and reporting of patient-oriented clinical research. We also desire to promote ongoing professional career development by supporting participants before, during, and after the program to allow them to follow through on their plans for clinical trials-based research. In addition, it is very important for us to enhance the pipeline of scientifically sound, well-designed early-phase clinical investigations that will provide a foundation for pivotal confirmatory trials to reduce the burden of high-impact neurological diseases. So this is a picture of our first cohort in Iowa City, And at the level that I'm showing it to you, you probably can't make out all of the people there. I'm towards the middle. Next to me is Jeremy Scheffner and many others from our first cohort in 2014. We did have a picture from 2015, but we haven't found it yet, although we found some pictures of one of our social events. So what our course is setting out to do is address a fundamental gap in basically the development of faculty members in terms of doing clinical trials. Early clinical trials are the hardest, and the expertise for planning trials, particularly in neurological diseases, is not evenly distributed across the country. You may have a lot of expertise at your center in designing cancer trials, but cancer trials are often a lot different from clinical trials that involve neurological diseases. My background is I did a fellowship in stroke neurology after an emergency medicine residency, and trials in stroke, which have disability outcomes and functional outcomes that are often related to the toxicity of the potential upfront harm of reperfusion treatments, is quite a different animal from a cancer trial using chemotherapeutics to reduce the growth of a tumor and causing side effects that can limit the tolerability of therapy. That being said, obviously there are many other conditions in neurology where chronic treatment is needed and tolerability is a major issue. But the idea is having statistical and logistical expertise to really do trials that are going to be helpful, allow you and the scientific community to learn, and actually move forward your science are somewhat challenging to develop, and the resources of some of the research networks that have been set up by NINDS, such as the Neurologic Emergencies Treatment Trials Network, the NeuroNext Network, and StrokeNet, are a bit daunting to access when you are developing early phase or pilot trials. So the idea is to give some of that expertise to people developing those early phase trials to really put some thought and effort into designing those key early trials. So this is something that may seem intuitively obvious, but I think we're just going to lay this out here just so that people understand this distinction that we make in the course that we find actually quite important. So one of the key goals of our course is to develop a protocol, which is a document that describes in detail how to conduct and interpret a scientific experiment. In particular, we focus on the design of clinical trials in people. A proposal is a document that motivates an entity with money to provide one with the money or resources to conduct research. And these things are related but not overlapping. And we find that trying to spell out how you're going to do your scientific experiment makes it better later to develop your proposal in terms of the scientific experiment that you actually plan, having thought of all the issues in terms of the logistics and how you're going to collect the data and how you're going to use the data. That being said, if you don't have a funded proposal or a way of getting the resources or the necessary means to do the project, then the protocol is not something that is necessarily useful, although writing a good clinical trial protocol is sort of one of our first steps of the course. We had been pretty sequential in developing the protocol and then having the groups derive a proposal from it in past years, and we're going to work to have a little bit more integration with this, which I think is more reflective of how both research proposals get created along with protocols. At certain levels, it is necessary to have a fully submitted protocol to either the FDA or even the granting agency at the time of the submission of a proposal. NINDS for clinical trials that are either later phase 2 or phase 3 does require an IND to be submitted to the FDA, and a fully fleshed out scientific protocol for a clinical trial is part of an IND submission. This is not to say that you shouldn't be thinking about what your aims are and writing a proposal and trying to get funded until you finish the whole protocol. But there are parts of the protocol that can be very helpful to moving that goal forward of getting your science done. So, as I sort of covered on the last slide, our early course focuses on the design of a great clinical trial protocol, but an important logistical consideration is how this will be funded. Again, it does take a little upfront investment in planning in terms of the writing to think about filling out all the aspects of the protocol, but our real goal is, and we spend a lot of time on how you are going to set up the hypotheses, the outcomes, the data collection, and the intervention. And that's stuff that is time that is well spent for the proposal development as well. And again, we're moving some of those things so they're going to happen a bit in parallel as opposed to very sequential, because we want the group that's in our course to make as much progress as possible and get these things either funded through local mechanisms at CTSAs, foundations, or and ultimately have trials become funded clinical trialists through the NIH. Okay, so time for another poll question. We want you to describe your primary academic department. And there is another choice. All right, so we see, and this is relatively reflective of what we have observed in our course over the past 2 years, that neurology is well represented, emergency medicine is well represented, neurosurgery is represented, and there are folks from other disciplines. And that is perfect. So I will move on to the next slide here. So I think one thing that we've tried to be more explicit about in this year is how we are making decisions regarding who are good candidates for the course. Last year we had about 60 applications for about 32 spots in our sort of regular track, and that led us to not be able to fit as many people into the course as who were qualified. So to sort of dive into the selection criteria, and let me just preface this by saying the selection criteria for our course are not a judgment on terms of what types of science is good or not good. There are plenty of studies, including prospective cohort studies or biomarker studies or natural history studies, that may be extremely important scientific questions that ought to be done and maybe is the right thing for you to be doing at your stage in your career development, and that is absolutely true. The issue is that our course is designed to help you set up a clinical trial. So sometimes these are defined differently by different IRBs and different entities, but what we are looking for is some intervention, a drug, device, or diagnostic or behavioral intervention delivered to patients prospectively. And again, when you're filling out the application, thinking about what is the important question for this trial and for your field that you're moving along science for. The intervention should have a good basis in biology, or if it's a behavioral intervention, a good basis in theory. And one of the goals of the trial should be to learn whether and how a follow-up trial should be conducted. Now, in general, in the development of young faculty members in research, we want their early studies to be something that would be useful regardless of the result. But it has to be pointed out that sometimes you will learn from your early phase trial that intervention is something that you should be potentially abandoning and moving on to something else. So that's one of the sort of thing that we look at most is what is the type of science and intervention in general that you are proposing. Obviously, one of the goals of the course is to take this sort of idea of an area of some type of intervention in some disease and help you make that specific into an answerable question in an early phase clinical trial. So our second selection criteria, and I've put all of this into the application instructions for this year, is feasibility. Do we believe that you can start the trial after designing it, get funded or use existing resources, and finish the trial? The goal of having this resource is both to help you in your career development, but also raise the level of the rigor of the science that is being done in clinical trials in the neurosciences. So we want to invest in projects that have a clear pathway that seems reasonable. If your pathway is that you want to do a 20 sites, $10 million multi-site clinical trial, that might be reasonable, but again, we would want to be seeing something like a plan for how you might be working with a senior PI in a multiple PI plan, as that would be a relatively tough sell for an investigator who's new to clinical trials to get something like that going. And in fact, our focus of our course is really on the trials that you would do potentially in your own center or an area where you have a lot of control to motivate funding agencies to do those larger trials later. That being said, some of us work in diseases that are rare, and it would be challenging to do a trial in only one center. But again, that falls into the logistics and feasibility. A trial that you can do, the more centers that you have to involve, the more we will probably start to wonder whether it's feasible for you at this step. And is there a more answerable and important question you could tackle at your own site with your own patients? Again, everybody's situation is different, and it's not, again, we're not going to necessarily completely discount something, but really we want to see that there's a pathway that is likely to lead to you getting patients into your trial, which is our goal. And then, the third major selection criteria is, do you have support? And this is part of the application. Do you have support of your chair, your department or institution? And we put a little bit more emphasis this year on the content area, which is usually having some local mentor who would be helping you with the disease area. And again, you may be highly expert in it as well, but if you've never done a clinical trial before, perhaps having a colleague in your department or in a close collaborator across departments who would potentially be someone who could be providing support for you through this process of getting your clinical trial implemented locally. They may know of little ins and outs of your IRB, etc. So we've put that stuff into the application, and we're interested in that, and we're going to consider that carefully so that to see that you have a support system. So I won't go into this in depth. We tried a little bit of an experiment last year of an advanced track, and it went pretty well actually. But one of the things that we were focusing on was people who were developing sort of artisanal clinical trials that used flexible and potentially adaptive designs and had clinical trial simulation that was necessary to understand how they worked. And this, we had a sort of separate group, a separate curriculum, and going forward in 2016, this is going to be integrated into our main curriculum if there are appropriate projects. And again, if you've been PI of a trial before, especially one you've designed, this might be a better track for you, but the details of it are going to be highly situational, and there is a lot to learn from even the regular sort of base course that we're offering, but there is an opportunity for additional training for biostatisticians as part of this potentially, but it's really contingent upon us finding the appropriate project. So if you again, the application instructions kind of lays out what might be appropriate projects in this area. I'm happy to talk with people about this. We're not going to know until we see what might be coming in, and from the projects that we accept into our course, then we would be thinking about what we might have in the advanced track. So here are the key bits of the timeline. Applications are due at midnight Pacific time on February 28th, 2016. I know it's a leap year and that there is a February 29th, but we as the executive committee are going to be carefully reviewing all of these applications, so we need to have sufficient time to go through these and score these. Certainly within reason, if you have questions about your application and want me to look at it before the deadline or somebody else, I'm happy to give you feedback, but recognize that sometimes I'm a little slow on my email. So probably the last time I'm reasonably going to have a chance to look at things is right after the stroke conference. So around the 21st, it may be harder for me to guarantee to get you feedback before the final due date of the application. The baseline survey will be some questions about your experience in clinical research and also some demographic stuff that the NIH wants us to get in terms of what institutions you're at, what departments you're at. So you will receive an invitation from us for a baseline survey, and also we may give you some baseline questionnaires regarding your knowledge and attitudes regarding how much training you have previously received in research and research methods. We will be making decisions by March 15th, barring any major problem in terms of reviewing the applications. In certain situations we have had a wait list or we've required additional information from some applicants, so it may not be hard and fast that we know by then, but we really want to make this a relatively prompt decision. And then what we're going to be doing, scheduling a little bit differently this year, and we'll having basically a small group match. We're working on one of the core values of our course is that you are grouped into small groups of 4 trainees, each paired with a clinician who is experienced in neurological clinical trials and a biostatistician experienced in neurological clinical trials. And your small group meets virtually prior to the course and goes through some various exercises as you make the case for your idea and also make the case for developing your outcome measures and everything like that. We have a sort of structured set of tasks for the small groups to do. So basically, we are going to get the groups set up. We're going to block out time on the calendars of our faculty, and it may be that the Will Meurer Chris Coffey group is going to meet on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays at 4 p.m. So you'll see that. It'll be in some sort of survey form. You'll say, okay, that's my first choice, and then this is my second choice, and this is my third choice. And the idea here is in past years, this sort of sets out in advance what time you would need to sort of put and sort of dedicate to when the course might be meeting. Your small group is going to need to have about 6 1-hour, maybe 90-minute meetings between April and August. So you won't necessarily need every single one of those blocks every 2 weeks. But people's calendars, especially the busy people who we have as our faculty and our trainees, calendar space is gold, so the idea is to try to get it on there as soon as possible and have some reliability to it. Of course, there are always situations where you might have vacation or some other sort of commitment, and again, I think your group can try to be flexible with those as much as possible. We will be having a reunion at the AAN in Vancouver, April 19th. We will, if you have been accepted into the course, we will certainly invite you to that. We don't have travel funding for that. It will not exactly be a reunion for you because you will have just started in the course, but you'll be hearing from some of the last 2 cohorts, what they have accomplished so far, and also have a chance to network with some of the faculty and meet us in person. And possibly, since we're even ahead of the curve, we will be ahead of the curve on this, maybe even see some of the people who will be in your small group in person. The in-person part of the course is in Ann Arbor, August 7th through 11th. This, if you know that you have a structural conflict with this date, this course is not going to be a good fit for you because your attendance and participation in the in-person course is crucial. We will be having the course 2 more years, and if the family trip to Italy is happening over that time period, we it's not going to work for you this year, because people get a lot done during this time period. This is really the centerpiece of the experience. The key deliverables that you'll be building during the course is the clinical trial protocol, which we really hope for you to have a good near final draft of in August, and a funding proposal likely in the fall, knowing that sometimes these that there are July submission deadlines for the American Heart Association and so forth, and we will be cognizant of that. But again, many of those things need to be resubmitted. There are many details in a protocol that would be worked out later. So generally, the funding proposal that you would be developing for the course would be something that would be likely developed in the fall. But we're going to have more concurrence with more development of the proposal going along with the protocol development, both at the the spring small group meetings and the in-person course in August. This really sort of shows what those tasks are a little graphically. The instruments and the pre-review, you'll be getting those even before you're accepted in the course. And again, if you want to defer finishing the instruments that have the knowledge quiz and so forth, certainly that's fine. But when you start in the course, we start to expect those, and we keep track of who has completed what. We will be having some webinars. I have a list of some of the planned topics on one of the subsequent slides. Again, the residential course is mandatory. And then we're going to have additional small groups in the fall, culminating in a mock study section where we really look at the proposal that you've developed and try to give you feedback in the way that an NIH-style study section would give you. So some of the instruments that we would be collecting, again, your general demographics. We use a clinical research appraisal instrument, which you'll get, gives your basic self-assessment as to how well you can do various research tasks. Methodology statistics knowledge quiz, don't panic about it. Course evaluations obviously come frequently. And then after you finish the course, we have outcome forms where we're trying to learn about what's happened with a clinical trial or project that you've developed. A little bit like a time to event analysis, where we're looking to see, did you get IRB approval? Did you get your first patient in? Et cetera, et cetera. Did you get it funded? Did you get FDA approval? So those forms start coming monthly, and we continue to remind you about those. You get personalized links to those. And again, that helps us determine whether our course is effective, because our goal is to elevate you and your science. Broadly speaking, the webinars and courses in Ann Arbor are divided into 4 general topical areas. Asking good questions in the scientific method, again, thinking about what studies should be done and how to use preclinical research to decide what the good questions are. Biostatistics and design considerations. Again, doing small clinical trials is hard, and there are potential methods to help make those trials more useful. Trial logistical considerations, the nuts and bolts of making the trial work, and responsible research. There are unique issues to the ethics of trials in neurological diseases. Again, I specialize in the sudden unpredictable ones, but obviously cognitive decline lends a number of issues. So there are things that we can, and also how an IRB may respond to recruitment practices, etc. So again, the idea of our responsible research and ethics training is to be focused on areas in a way that's complementary to the regular regulatory training you get from city or similar programs on responsible research. It's a prerequisite to know that you know that stuff. The idea is to go beyond the basics and talk more about what the unique problems in interventional clinical trials in the central nervous system are, and even the peripheral nervous system. I shouldn't discount in the nervous system. So, all right. So these open webinars, we'll be getting the schedule together soon. They'll be on Thursday and Friday afternoons, likely starting in April. We have videos of some of our past topics available on the website, and we'll be doing some new topics this year with fresh views. but also give some previous ones that were particularly good, because it gives a new opportunity for us to refresh with new information and get different questions from you. Small trial design has been a popular one, how to write the specific aims page. Budgeting is a big black box, and I think we need to work more on that. And we're working to get some great speakers for the special topics in human subjects protection for neurological research. So this will be coming together more completely soon, but we wanted to get out and talk to you all about the course and the application process. Again, talked a little bit about the small groups. The core faculty will be leading these. You'll be further developing the ideas that you've put into your initial application. There's development of a clinical trial synopsis that you'll be bringing to the residential meeting in August, and really this ought to be mostly a draft protocol that you're going to be making some tweaks to when you're there. And then concurrent development of the specific aims page, possibly the budget as well, so that we can work on that even more when you're in Ann Arbor. We anticipate and expect that there is peer-to-peer mentorship within these groups with you and the 3 other trainees that are in your group. And again, we hope to be using an online collaboration tool that will help facilitate this. We know that sometimes it's a little bit weird if you don't know these folks. They may be in slightly different diseases or even wildly different diseases. As some of the groups, we will try as best we can to make them biologically coherent, but our major priority is working to put groups together that have good times to meet, that work for the faculty and the trainees. These are some of the things that we'll be covering in those small group sessions in the spring. Again, our goal is to have about 6. If groups need more or able to combine a couple of these, there is some flexibility of it. And again, the draft full protocol, perhaps an outline of the grant along with the specific aims pages, and some draft of the budget prior to coming to Michigan. This is lovely Ann Arbor. It does not look like this right now, although fortunately the sun is out. Although it's a little unfortunate the sun is out because the cloud cover that comes from Lake Michigan provides our insulation. So right now, with it being clear, we have more like Minnesota weather. So how many participants will be selected? This year we have things set up to have 36 spots for people in the course. And we provide, I think I have this, oh yeah. So we provide all expenses with the condition of if you have budgeted conference funding from a K, T, or F grant that could be used to defray some of these costs, or you've put this into the budget of your K already, we can sort this out with you on an individual basis. Do not in any way construe this to mean that if you have a K, T, or F grant that you need to come up with some money. We have funding for this. This is just a regulatory issue, and we can certainly deal with it. And it hasn't come up yet, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But I need to just point that out. Again, we want everybody in town on that Sunday by about 5 p.m. Ann Arbor is about a half hour from Detroit Metro Airport, which is a large airport with linkages throughout North America and the world. This is a picture that is way too small to see, that just kind of goes through some of the lectures we've had in years past, going along those general thematic areas of how to construct clinical trials. We'll have some additional small group sessions in the fall, and we will actually be working to put faculty bios and pictures up on the website as well. I am amongst the faculty who are currently delinquent in terms of giving their picture and bio to Jenna, but we should be having those up soon. And again, additional small group sessions, probably 2 or 3 in terms of finalizing your research plan for your grant, finishing the human subject section of a grant, knowing that some foundations may have different requirements, but having a plan for how to protect human subjects is an important part of NIH grant applications. And again, the expectations, those who have completed the tests on time, we have a completion certificate. There's a version with distinction for people who were particularly good at getting all the tasks done. includes the instruments that we will be administering for your evaluation and our evaluation of how well the course is doing. And again, the goal is to have the protocol done in August and then move to finalize the proposal. So to have some work on that proposal done in August as well. So you're really working on putting the gravy on your grant proposal. And again, if you're really dead set on submitting something in July, we absolutely have no opposition to that, but the way the course works, we're still expecting you to be doing some finalization of your protocol, which you would need to implement research that you submitted for in July anyway. And we think that there are, and hopefully that we have the basic science laid out well enough in the in the spring small groups that there shouldn't be major differences. But there's a lot of details to work out when you're going to a protocol to learn how to do all of the clinical trial elements. All right, so this is the general feeling in the room. If you could look at this poll about, we've got about 19 people here. If we could see how interested people are. It's a really, we could actually quibble about this survey because basically all the responses are positive. So this would almost be like a political poll in that, at least somewhat. So okay, so I see a good amount of enthusiasm for this, so that's good. So I think that's the last of my set stuff. This is the hotel in downtown Ann Arbor. We were, if you've talked to people who did the course last year, we were in suburban Ann Arbor last year, which was nice. But I grew up in hardcore suburbia outside of Cincinnati, and it will be nice to be in downtown and close to all the restaurants and stuff that makes Ann Arbor a very cool college town. The Campus Inn is getting a new name, and the hotel is actually being completely renovated right now. So you will really be going into a brand new space, which will be great. And it's right in the middle of town, very close to the university and the university hospital, but also close to the main campus. The college students will not be in session, so the place is not. While I'm saying college town, it's pretty sedate in August. So with that, I think I am interested in what questions remain amongst the group in terms of the chat window. I'll make the chat window a little bigger because this is, again, we use a different platform, something called BlueJeans for the small groups that's better at canceling echo. Otherwise, I would generally be okay with giving you guys access to the microphones, but Adobe Connect, unless everybody's wearing headsets, doesn't allow for that very well. But the BlueJeans software we use for other small groups meetings works quite well in terms of this. And we expect people to be on the webcam so they kind of see the core faculty, see that the core faculty aren't multitasking when they're presenting their ideas to them, and also get to know people a little bit by their faces so that there's more comfort with collaborating with the other trainees in your group. Yeah, so open webinars, so we broadly announced to the public. We show all of our webinars, which are general information and are in a setting like this, where it's mainly one or a panel of people talking and giving information with the opportunity for questions. We show all of those publicly in this forum like this. Anybody can come into this room, this NeuroTrials room, and at the end of this talk, we will be saving the video and posting this to YouTube so that anybody can look at it later. So that's what's meant by an open webinar. The small groups where you're developing your idea and your protocol are not open to the public and are not posted to the internet and are not publicly available information. So that's, but anybody, including people from anywhere in the world with an internet connection, can come and watch our webinars. They are not just open to course participants. Would I be interested in an application for a clinical trial that would be designed and operated out of one or more academic medical centers but might attract grant support from a pharmaceutical company? Yes. However, one of the things about working with a pharmaceutical company is the pharmaceutical company may or may not be interested, and sometimes they have a bit of a process in terms of granting you support or even the ability to use the agent or amend their IND. So if I was looking at an application that was proposing to use a pharmaceutical company's support, that would be fine. It would be nice to know what part of the process you're in. And again, we talk about this in the course, but one of the things is, a lot of our previous course participants who had been hoping for pharmaceutical company support had it go poof after being assured by somebody that it was a good thing. So again, it would depend. We wouldn't be opposed to it, but we have a sort of baseline skepticism unless there was some evidence of enthusiasm. So it seems like Dr. Ballou, I'm going to probably say that wrong, postdoctoral research fellow, would this course be appropriate, useful for postdocs, or is it geared towards clinicians? So one of the FAQs that I have on here is sort of people who might be doing a fellowship or in that setting. Ultimately, we're interested in developing you as a scientist who's doing clinical trials. If you would be the first author on the ultimate publication that was deriving from that clinical trial and probably listed as the PI on the consent form, then this course could potentially be appropriate and useful. Certainly not all clinical trials have clinician PIs. Obviously, if you aren't a clinician and it was a deeply clinical type thing, you would probably have some sort of clinician partner as your mentor. But the idea is, you really are going to be a scientific leader of the project that you're doing. So the question from Prasha, can mid-career investigators apply? Yes, absolutely. The major thing that we're looking to screen for is people who've had experience running multi-center trials. If you've been a site investigator on a multi-center trial but haven't been the real scientific leader of a trial and designed your own multi-center trial, you can definitely apply. And some people even late career who have previously done more imaging research and so forth, and not, maybe late career is the wrong term, it sounds kind of ominous, but more senior people have done the course, but usually it's for people who haven't designed a lot of their own clinical trials before. Yes, Robin brings up a good point. If there is a letter from somebody at the industrial sponsor, potentially promising support, if you are proposing to use an agent with support of a pharmaceutical company, that would be reasonable. If it's something that's a little bit more aspirational, like a pharmaceutical company has a program that you're planning to apply for to get funding to do the clinical trial, if you had a bit of information from a research program official at that drug company saying that this general idea may meet our needs in terms of what we're looking for, that would be helpful. Obviously, they can't guarantee that they're going to give you a grant, but to say that this is within what we typically give grants for, that would be helpful to us, even if you're pointing to a website in your application of saying, these are the types of things this pharmaceutical company has funded before. We feel reasonable about this. So again, Prasha, in terms of applications that are under review or submitted to NINDS before the course start, so that is if it is for a clinical trial, it puts you in a little bit of a pickle because you're designing something in this course. If you get a good score, then the additional design probably wouldn't be helpful. But in certain situations, you just don't know what that score is going to be. You could be in a position where you get some scientific feedback, and we provide scientific feedback that's different from the study section. In that situation, I think you could certainly email me what the general terms of that is, or we could talk on the phone, and that might be a simpler way to sort of look at that situation. In general, if you've submitted something, if there is enough detail that needs to be filled in about what the protocol says, that you're open to scientific input and you could use scientific input, it's definitely a possibility. But I would, I think in situations where we've had people who've been in the midst of stuff that's already been submitted before, people, one of the key parts of this course is creating something. So if there's a smaller clinical trial that you wanted to develop to do as a pilot for some other area while you're waiting to see what those grants show, that might generally be a better fit for the course because it's something that you are really creating anew. But if it's something where it's, you really think there's going to be the opportunity to do a lot of scientific improvement after the initial submission, I think that could definitely be something that's potentially appropriate for the course. So a proposed multi-center clinical trial, the general study type requirement. So I would say that we are actually a little bit, not necessarily opposed, but a multi-center trial is generally, what you're looking at is a trial that would convince others that a multi-center trial is feasible, warranted, and scientifically justified. So is there a question that you can answer at your own site that would make StrokeNet or NET or NeuroNext or even a general clinical trials application to NINDS outside of those networks be interested in funding the multi-center trial? That's not to say that in certain diseases you might need to have multiple centers, but in general, our course is more suited to a study that you could control at your own site. This orientation will be archived to be shared with possible candidates at The Ohio State University. So I think this would be, it may be a couple days, but we'll post this on our website and YouTube. And we're going to do a little decluttering on our website and give it a little bit of a design eye. I know it's a little dark looking right now, but again, we're focusing on making sure the information's there on the website. And again, please feel free to email me additional questions. No problem. So one of the little quirks of this is I'm happy to answer as many questions as people have. If there aren't additional questions, again, when I see that someone is typing, I could just be saying thank you, which is fine. I'm really happy that this was helpful. Hopefully this is illustrative. I would really like to see folks apply for the course. And again, we are really quite willing to work with anybody, and I can give more details as to what sorts of things are a good fit. If certainly I didn't give my email, but it is there's an info email address on our course website, neurotrials.training, that is something that you can go to sort of contact us. It contacts a few of us at the same time, so we're a little faster to respond to it. So again, I thank you for your interest in our course, and I thank you again for supporting this course, and I'm looking forward to some great applications. And yes, a pilot crossover study would be appropriate for the course, and that's sort of those sorts of things, using those designs that are very efficient and you can learn a lot from a small cohort of patients potentially, is really one of the key things in our course that we think is a strength developed. So that would be one of the types of studies. Now the idea of what's a pilot, lots of people have ideas about it. We have ideas for small clinical trials, but again, we focus on the science and making sure that there is a interesting hypothesis and not simply a quote unquote pilot trial that's like just doing sort of phase 3 type hypothesis in an underpowered way. Thinking about what question can be answered to show promise or futility. So definitely, and potentially even more feasibility type outcome measures in terms of can we get patients into this study. So yeah, those sorts of things are absolutely appropriate for the course. And in fact, oftentimes what we're looking for is thinking critically about that pilot crossover is once you get the results of it, what's it going to drive you to do next? And thinking about that, that the point of the trial is to learn how you should do the next trial and whether you should do the next trial. So that's what we would be helping to do in that sort of pilot crossover type study. All right. Well, I thank everybody for their attention. Again, if there are additional questions, I'll stay here for a minute, and I'll stay here for a couple minutes. And if not, again, I look forward to seeing your applications, and I hope everybody has a good rest of their Tuesday. The detail of the application format is on the website. There's a downloadable Word document that basically goes through all the checklists as to what elements you need to collect for the application. And certainly, if you can't find it, let me know. It should be there on neurotrials.training pretty prominently through a link. All right. Well, again, thank you, everybody. And this concludes our session. And I look forward to hopefully meeting with you and having you guys in the course.